Renee, how do you feel? Tell us all about
it. Okay, sorry. I had to get that out. I feel really good, Jason. It feels great that we record this the day after this happened because I just want to remind people, let me take you on a little history lesson. I can remember because I was there in free agency. Y'all remember when we signed Bogey? Oh my gosh, you have to remember. We signed Bogey. We signed Gallo. No one cared. We said Clint Capella has been hurt for a year and a half, but he's going to be healthy. No one cared. So I want everyone to remember that. I just wanted to make sure that we remember that because I was defending the Hawks' decisions. People were like, oh, yeah, but, you guys need a lot. You haven't been to the playoffs in years. You got a young group. Listen, I remember all of it. I remember when we traded for Lou Williams. That was a big get. I can just remember how all the pieces, DeAndre Hunter, he had a great start. We still didn't even get him for the end of this round, but I can just remember all the pieces that people didn't really think were a big deal. Look at us now. I'm just saying, hey, yeah, let's go. That's how I feel right now. Look, on the NBA on TNT, they started to play Knuck If You Buck all the time, but it's starting to be the anthem for Atlanta because no one has believed Atlanta since 2020. No one has believed Georgia since 2020. If you guys can recall, Georgia, we stood tall when it was the Senate race. We stood tall when it was the presidential race. Georgia's been saying a lot since 2020, and I'll just leave it at, we are in the Eastern Conference Finals now. Let's go! Okay, I'm just saying. I had to get that out. Thank you guys for allowing me this space.
And I got to say, I think one of for anybody that saw Game 7, a really exciting and a game and a series full of things to talk about. One of the things that I think was a certain danger sign for Sixers fans and the team was that Trae Young, I think he was like 1 of 9 or 1 of 11 in the first half. And the Hawks, it was a 2-point game either way the whole time. That was a warning sign that it could get real bad because I'll tell you, it was really interesting to contrast the struggles of Ben Simmons, which are much in the news right now, which we will talk about, and Trae Young's struggles in that game, because with Trae, he could go 1 for 20, and I think the next shot's going in. And he certainly thinks the next shot's going in, and his whole team thinks the next shot's going in. And if he shoots a 35-footer, I'm like, uh-oh. Whether it goes in or not, I'm scared.
Fact.
If I'm a Sixers fan. And then, contrasting that with Ben Simmons, who really, what an interesting player he is, because I have not seen a player get the yips in that way where they just did not want to shoot, didn't want the ball in a long time. It was hard to watch at times, and really surprising. I mean, like, just an evolution of the struggles that he's had kind of his whole career, but certainly within the postseason.
He was 2 for 4 in the in Game 7. A total of 5 points, but in all of the fourth quarters for that whole series, a lot of times it was 0 for 0. To your point, and to the Trae point, so there's a lot to unpack there. I saw a clip going around that was from 2017, and Ben Simmons was like, "Yeah, this hack a Ben thing is not going to happen any longer." I saw that recirculating because in 2017 it was happening a lot in games, and they were asking him about it. And now we saw that the Hawks, they utilized it to their benefit a lot of times. You hack them, make them think about it. Now everybody's thinking about free throws. And then when you go to the other side, Trae didn't have an amazing game. Like, Trae, he 1 for 9 at a certain point, 1 for 11. Yeah. He finished the game 5 for 23. Not one of his greatest shooting nights. But to that point, skill set matters because if Trae went 1 for 11, what Ben was doing, people would have told him, you better shoot the next one. But when
you gotta shoot.
You know what I mean? But it's just a different feel because, of course, Ben Simmons is not a proven shooter. We know Ben Simmons struggles when it comes to beyond the 3-point line and even at the free throw line. Even take it a step further than that. Look at what Doc Rivers said right after the game.
This was really surprising.
They asked the question, do you see Ben Simmons, the player, as a point guard that can lead a championship team?
Doc, you think Ben Simmons can still be a point guard for a championship team like the one you guys want to become?
Yeah, David, I don't know that question or the answer to that right now. So I don't know the answer to that.
Now, this is the coach that just went to war with Ben Simmons, that your starting point guard that on the number 1 team in the conference, just to put it in perspective. And Doc Rivers said, I don't know. He basically just threw it out there like he doesn't necessarily know if Ben Simmons can lead a championship team. And to me, that says a lot. That's big.
So I think the context for maybe some of the people who aren't super familiar with the career of Doc Rivers, Doc's has been a longtime coach. He's a great human being. He's had a lot of success as a coach in the league. And I think one of the characteristics of Doc Rivers' coaching style is that whatever criticism he levels against players behind closed doors, outside of those doors, to everyone else, to the media, to opposing teams, to people asking questions, he will defend his players basically to the death. There was a question someone asked earlier in the postseason. Ben had shot less than 50% from the line in a game, and Doc was asked about it, and he said, well, we got 1 point per possession, which is a kind of like an advanced stat. You want to score 1 point per possession or above to be an efficient offense. Well, we got 1 point per possession out of that, so that, the analytics tell you that's good. That's a ridiculous statement, but it was in line with the way Doc Rivers runs his team. He famously said after Kendrick Perkins got injured during his time with the Celtics after their championship, oh, no one's beaten people have yet to beat our starting 5. So to hear this from Doc, I gotta say, I was legitimately shocked.
Jaw drops shocked that it happened right after the game. Like, this is the number 1 team of the Eastern Conference that obviously got knocked out in the semis, but for that to come out of Doc's mouth, that says a lot. I mean, I look for Philly to shake it up. I know Philly's saying for a long time has been trust the process, and now, a lot of people are questioning, okay, what's going to go on with Philly? We've trusted the process for long enough. Does it need to be what are your thoughts? Like, what does Philly need to do at this point?
I mean, this is the end. This feels like the end of this run with this roster. Certainly those comments by Doc, and then Joel's pretty pointed comments when he specifically called out the moment late in the game when Ben basically had an open dunk from the right baseline, and instead he passed it to Matisse Thybulle.
And they called a terrible foul. Sorry,
there was that game was full of bad fouls. So Joel called that out as a specific moment. And listen, just in terms of fit, right? Joel Embiid is a dominant low post player, arguably the best player in the league for a lot of the season when he was healthy before the injuries. And, Ben Simmons is a non-shooting guard who needs to push the pace, right? Yep. So Joel will thrive with shooting around him. By the same token, Ben has to, Ben's best lineup is probably 4 shooters around Ben Simmons. So from a basketball standpoint, it looks like a parting of the ways. And also, Philly is a town that does, let's just say they're hard on their sports and they're hard on their athletes. And that's kind of their brand. They probably step over the line sometimes, but it feels like the patience has just kind of worn out. And then the other thing with shooting, it's like, I saw a lot of tweets where people were like, he should just take them. Or, the thing is, this is not the work that can be done in the middle of the postseason,
right.
In the middle of the season. You got to lay this foundation in the off season. You got to tear up the house and put a whole new basement down.
To that point, I think that's why people are upset, because Ben Simmons isn't a rookie. It's not his second year. So I think that's why a lot of people, I haven't seen somebody get as much slack as Ben Simmons has gotten, but it reminds me of a Blake Griffin where he came in super athletic. We all knew it, but can you shoot? What other skill sets can you bring to the table? And I think people, he's going to have to figure something out in the offseason. Ben Simmons, you have to go to work in the offseason involving shooting. You have to.
So if let's say he remains a poor outside shooter, outside of the paint, but gets his free throw shooting, into the mid 60s, is that enough to be a contender. I don't think that's enough to get you into the conference finals or certainly an NBA finals as a guard. But can you be a team that like moves the needle if you at least shoot 65, like just below 70 from the free throw line?
I don't know, Jason, because look at how the NBA is trending.
Yeah,
everything is threes and layups. So Ben has the layups down pat, but no one really cares about that mid-range right now. Coaches, I'm talking about. Analytics, I'm talking about. So the fact that your guard can't shoot threes, it puts so much pressure on everyone else on the court, because now you have a defender that's roaming around, all just clouding up all of the paint, just mucking up the paint, helping off on Joel Embiid, digging down on Joel, helping, stunting, recovering. So I think that type of skill set could have been very effective in another era of the NBA. But where the NBA is trending, all they want the post players shooting threes now. I mean, they don't even want post players that can't make threes at this point.
Now, okay, so Ben has been, we've
poor
discussed
Ben.
Poor Ben. I feel bad for him. As I feel as bad as you can feel for a guy who's in the first year of a max deal, but it's like, man, it is a conundrum for sure. And you could see that he felt it like during those games. But I guess the next person, there's a lot of blame to go around. The next person we got to talk about is Doc Rivers, whose some of the lineups the Sixers played. I'm not sure what Dwight Howard does that's like good on a basketball court, other than the potential for like giving the opposing star an injury that keeps them from playing. Like, other than that, Dwight has turned into a guy who just throws his arms around. But so Doc Rivers, I think he has the most blown 3-1 leads in NBA history. He's lost a bunch of 7-game series. What amount of blame for this or responsibility, I guess I should say, should the coach get for some of that?
You know, I think a lot. I think, you know, a lot falls on the star player, of course, and that's what you get paid for. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. But I think, too, coaching plays such a role in sports. I don't think that people really understand how much coaching means to sports. Here's an example to show you. Have you seen a player that played for one team and then they get traded and all of a sudden they look like a mega all-star for another team? Julius Randle, another team, another coach, another system. So, yeah, exactly. Like, you could list them all. A lot of the people that left the Lakers, honestly. Yeah. You look at Jordan Clarkson. If you have a coach that believes in you, if you have a coach that makes adjustments to fit the style of players, if you have a coach that just gets it and gets his players and what they're good at and puts them in the best positions to be successful, that team instantly changes. And like, I love Coach Lloyd Pierce. I love him as a man. He's working my foundation. But the way that Coach Nate McMillan understands the Atlanta Hawks, puts the players in certain positions to where they all look like all-stars at this point, that's the talent. That's when you see talent in the coaching. So in the same realm with Doc Rivers, he has the talent. We see it. Tobias Harris. I mean, he has Maxey. Look at what Seth Curry has just exploded onto the scene. You got Joel Embiid. You got Ben Simmons. When you list all those players and then you list who we had and who we had hurt, look, Bogey was out there playing, but we all could see that Bogey was not Bogey. He's clearly hurt. He's not mobile. When you look at who we had out there, and that's not taking anything away from our guys, Philly was the number one team for a reason. And so, Doc, you have to be able to make adjustments, put those players in the right positions to be successful, including a Ben Simmons. You know, when you have a player that has glaring weaknesses, you have to hide them the best you can. We know Trae Young is small. Everyone knows Trae Young is small. Knicks, you guys try to figure out ways to bully him, to not let him take us one. What did Coach Nate McMillan do? He made adjustments, and we know Trae is small, but you can't do nothing with it. You can't isolate him. You can't get him on islands. You can't bully ball him. That's coaching. That's Trae Young being a great player, but that's coaching.
To that end, but one could argue that the Sixers, despite their collapse and the ignominious end to their season, kind of gave the Bucks a roadmap. They had, they had leads in crucial games in this series, 20 plus point lead in Game 5 before they choked it away. Lead in Game 7, just slight lead late. Obviously won Game 6. Is that something you're concerned about? Like that they, size on the perimeter, try and put a lot of arms in Trae's vision, and just hope that Bogey and Red Velvet and the rest.
Come
of
on,
them,
rumble, Red Velvet, rumble!
Man, Red Velvet, what a come up for my guy into the national consciousness. He's become a meme overnight.
Yep. For me, and this really, like, everyone knows, I am a really big fan of the Hawks. I will just throw that out there in water is wet news. I love the Hawks, okay? And then I can also, okay, so just so we understand, but I want people to also understand that I know basketball. And so when I watch basketball, I was telling you this when we played against the Knicks. I'm like, we lost to the Knicks one game. Jason, you can attest to this. I came on here in the production meeting. I'm like, I'm so excited right now because basketball me, what I saw happening on that court, I know we won that series. Like, and we weren't by far the winners of that series yet, but basketball me, looking at the X's and O's, the shots that Trae Young misses by sheer our offensive repertoire, Trae Young still gets a lot of wide open shots. So yes, put the big guys on him. Yes, beat him up. Yes, try to, play this bully ball. Our offense still generates wide open shots. That's why the biggest thing for me, and people see me tweet about it, is whether or not we're on that night. Like when we're on and then we go on those unreal runs and we like 25-7 runs, that's when we're hitting the open shots that we're getting. I can remember when we lost the game, I think it was Game 6. We lost it, but we were missing those wide open shots. It was down to that last, even threw it to a 3. We missed the same shot that John Collins had made in another series. I think our biggest worry is if we're making or missing shots with the Hawks. I don't care what people do because we've seen 100 different defenses on Trae. We've seen even regular season, they were trapping him at half court. National fans don't see that because they don't watch us. Teams were trapping Trae Young at half court in the regular season to try to make anybody but Trae beat him. We've seen it all. I'm not concerned about that. I just want to I'm just concerned, are we making or missing shots that night? I really feel that way no matter who we're playing.
Finally, like, can you, listen, you're a shooter. Can you fix, how long does it take to fix a shot? Like, can you completely rebuild the shot? Like, there's some talk, famously, there's a lot of conjecture that Ben is actually right-handed. He, for reasons unknown, learned to shoot with his left hand, but he does most everything in his life with his right hand. How long does it take to fix a shot, and what do you have to do?
Well, it's interesting because we played Ben just now. We're about to play Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think that there's a lot of similarities in those two in the sense of those are guys that, for whatever reason, their shots just are not there. I think with Ben, it's repetition. I'm one of those people, I'm sorry, when it comes to Giannis, Ben, even a Blake Griffin, I believe in repetition. And so when people talk about, we've all seen players that may not have the prettiest shot, but it goes in, right? Like it may not, the form may not be there, but boy, is the accuracy there. That's repetition. That means that, and the reason I say that for the people that don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to basketball, your form is everything. Like Steph Curry has such a pure shot. Klay Thompson, such a pure shot. That means your elbow's in. All you got to do is line it up and it should go in. That's what we mean by pure and all the form. But people without that still have found a way that even if there's a hitch in your shot or it's not lined up, they still make shots. That's repetition. I feel like all off season, the only thing that Ben needs to be doing, the only thing that Giannis and them, you just have to just focus on shooting. Repetitions we saw LeBron James. I don't know if people remember this, but LeBron used to have a knock on him that he wasn't a good enough outside 3-point shooter. So what did LeBron do in that offseason? Like even still now to this day, people don't believe that LeBron James can make threes, but we've seen it time and time again now. In big moments, he's knocked down threes. And so I think that's just getting in the gym. And there's no secret sauce. I mean, just to me, get in the gym, work on your shot, and you have all the resources at your fingertips. And that brings us to the Bucks, the Bucks beat Brooklyn. And a lot of people were shocked, but Injuries, man. That's all I can say. And not to take nothing away from the Bucks. I'm just saying.
Its injuries have been a storyline of this last 2 seasons. We can debate the effect the compacted schedule had on it, but I got to say, I think a lot of us thought the Nets would win, but they had 2 of the greatest players that have ever played on the court. Kevin Durant showed why he is just one of the most electric scorers, maybe the best scorer in NBA history in Game 5. But man, he was completely depleted at the end of Game 7. Like, I have not seen someone that tired in a long time. He airballed his last 3. He was like, when there were stoppages in play lane, he just looked like he needed to take a nap, man. Shouts to him for trying, but congrats to the Bucks. It's been a lot of adversity. You mentioned the shooting woes for Giannis, but at least, man, I can't wait for this series, because I think the thing is, a lot of the criticism of Coach Budenholzer was like, are they going to put Giannis on somebody? Are they going to use him on defense? Like, what is going to happen there? I'm fascinated to see if they have Giannis guard Trae or be part of the scheme to block out the sun over Trae at some point.
I pray they do. That would be from your mouth to the coach's ears. That would be amazing, because I think that one of Giannis's main strengths is his length, his athletic ability. He's meeting people at the rim the same way Lopez is. You know what I mean? So I think, great. Put him out there at the 3-point line to chase around Trae. You want to see somebody tired? Great. That would be great. Like I said, I would love to see that. But, we got to give props to when props is due. The difference between a Giannis and a Ben Simmons is Giannis had 40 points and 13 rebounds and closed out a series against a team that, and I know they had injuries, but all we didn't hear anything about any of those teams in the East. I want people to understand that too. It was, can the Nets compete with the West teams? And I'm talking about earlier in the season. There was no conversation for anyone else. It was, oh my gosh, the Nets got Kyrie, they got James Harden, they got Kevin Durant. Who are they going to have to be able to compete against in the West? So to Giannis's defense, he does have a glaring, fault when it comes to shooting, but he still finds a way to get it done. 40 points and 13 rebounds. And we have to shout out Chris Middleton. I know that we talk a lot about Giannis and everyone else, but Chris Middleton's 23 and 10, and the time that he gets his buckets, they are very timely buckets for them.
Yeah, he's really, really good. I have to ask about Giannis's, the amount of time he takes to shoot a free throw.
Oh gosh.
So the NBA cracked down on the Nets because they were putting a shot clock up on the jumbotron.
I can't. I love it here in sports. I would just like to say. And the fans were counting.
Which I think is, I'm sorry, but if that's the rule, they should be allowed to put the clock on the jumbotron. They should be allowed to do it.
Gosh.
It's just an indication of time, and he does take a long time. Man, what is the response in gonna be in Atlanta when Giannis goes to that line and he goes through his routine, which amounts to he basically takes 2 ghost free throws. He gets into his stance and then he, without the ball, shoots one. And then he kind of shakes his shoulders and he shoots another one. And then he gets the ball, then he takes a deep breath, and then finally he shoots it. And usually that's about 11 and a half
So you
to
studied
12
this.
seconds.
So Jason, you studied this at this point, I'm assuming.
You just see it so much at this point. I mean, do you think...
I can tell you what we're not going to do. Well, I don't know, but after watching the Nets count, he was making more of them. The announcer even highlighted it.
He did make more of them.
Yeah, the more the fans counted how long it was taking, it was like he liked it and he started making more than he normally makes. So if Atlanta fans are listening, please, let's not count. Let's let him do his normal routine, shoot his normal percentage without us doing that, because, I mean, it does seem like an extremely long amount of time. I will say that. It's pretty, he gets himself all the way together at the free throw line.
He really does. He gets the whole thing. And it's a good point. I think that counting, it just took his mind off it somehow.
Yeah.
I'm not sure because as we saw with Ben, you can get in your head in basketball.
Yeah.
It is a confidence sport, and when your confidence goes, there's no foundation to build anything on.
So, Jason, dare I ask, what are your predictions? Because I'm not even going to, say mine. What are your predictions for this round, the Bucks versus the Hawks? I mean, no one really saw this as an Eastern Conference final matchup, but here we are.
I'm going to put it Hawks in 7.
Oh, okay. Okay, so we're going the whole distance.
I think we're going to go the whole distance because here we go.
Hey!
I just think both these teams have shown, for all their strengths, have shown an ability to fumble the bag in crucial. There's still a lot of learning here and a lot of growing. The Hawks are, shouts to them for growing into themselves at exactly the right time, but they're still figuring it out like the killer instinct. And I think the same could be said of the Bucks. I think it's going to be a long series, and I'm kind of hoping for a long series. I think that would be really fun.
Oh, I'm glad you said that because, I'm so here for all Game 7s that don't involve the Hawks.
Yeah,
I knew it the night before.
What was that like?
I knew it. It's terrible. I'm telling you, it's and then people are tweeting me, am I worried? It's Game 7. Anything can happen. Of course I'm worried. That doesn't mean I don't believe, but it's so fun. I never experienced it. I've been in we have Game 5s in the WNBA. Yeah. I've been in multiple Game 5s in the WNBA. Cool, calm, and collected. That's great. I get to control my own destiny. I'm confident in that. When you have to sit by and watch what happens in a game where you're emotionally invested, I don't want a Game 7, okay? I know you said Hawks in 7. I would much rather Hawks in 6, please, and thank you. And you mentioned something, fumbling the bag.
Yeah.
The Suns take Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Mm-hmm. Chris Paul did not play. Did the Clippers fumble that game and fumble that bag?
No. First of all, I would reject the premise because this is the first, and this is actually a shocking stat, but it's their first conference finals in franchise history. They've had some really good players.
I have to interject. They have multiple players. That's, let's not take that route. Well, you have a multi-champion that's leading your team. I just will say that.
So this is a great, I actually think, fantastic achievement for them. I'm really happy for Paul George, shutting up the critics. Never forget that he was playing on the road in Utah and the crowd was chanting overrated him. Now, did Reggie Jackson, did various other players step up and save him a little bit? Yes, but he had good games and he played wonderfully on both sides of the ball. I think, listen, you lose Game 1 on the road. That's not a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal. It's the playoffs, but you expect that. Okay, so now you adjust and you come back out and you see what you have. But I don't think it's a fumble the bag situation, certainly. And it's still a great achievement for a Clippers franchise in their first conference finals. And it's honestly a lot of pressure off them too. The fact that, they've had a tumultuous postseason themselves in inviting the Mavericks to be their first round opponent, and then very nearly choking that away, going through having to deal with Kawhi's injury, which I don't know. Do you see it as a good or bad sign that we don't really know the exact nature of Kawhi's injury yet?
I see it as a good sign because if it was something that was going to keep him out, let's say the rest of the year, I feel like they would have just came out and said, we won't have him, or we won't. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because with all of this, Chris Paul is still day to day due to the COVID protocol. I don't know if that's good or bad. Does that mean I don't know what to take of this, but I just know from a player's perspective, when you're in the Western Conference Finals and you have one of the best players on another team, Chris Paul, as we know, he's considered the best leader in the NBA, one of the best leaders to ever play. He's been the closer for them a lot of times. Devin Booker's been doing his thing all throughout. He had 40, 13, and 11 in that first game. But if you're missing somebody like a Chris Paul, the athlete preparer in me is we got to go steal this game. Let's go. We need to steal. We're not the home court team anyway. So you already know you got to steal a game off rip because you're not the higher seed. So when I'm preparing for these type of situations, you're always looking at, all right, we got to go steal one. This was the one. It's game one. They're missing Chris Paul, who has all the experience. Like, we know, again, you talked about it from the Clippers side. Hello, Suns. They haven't really been in this position in recent history either. So if I'm thinking from the Clippers perspective, absolutely, that's the one. Like, that's the one you steal, where their leader is out with COVID protocol. That's unexpected. That's the one. And I'm not saying that they obviously they should have absolutely won it, but I'm saying athlete me, yeah, that's the one.
What's your prediction for this series?
Man, we shouldn't doubt ourselves. Last time when we were talking about the Suns series, we both kind of played around with, would the Suns sweep somebody, because they were that good when they played against the Lakers. They looked that good. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a sweep, but boy, do I think Suns in 5. Like, I just really, they're dominant right now. And for them to do that without Chris Paul, that's a good looking team. What are your thoughts?
I agree with you. I'm going to give them one more game. I'm going to say Suns in 6, just because of the indefinite nature of Chris Paul's absence, and the fact that I think the Clippers have a lot of pressure off them. I think they're going to be formidable in LA. But yeah, I think the Suns, the way they're playing right now, that is another team that has grown into itself as the playoffs have gone on, and they're just, it's almost house money at this point. Everybody is making a name for themselves. There's no pressure on them until like a pressure game comes up. But they just look to be absolutely flowing. Devin Booker is magnificent. DeAndre Ayton is playing the best basketball of his career. They are on, campaign. They're on a level right now.
So I have a couple questions for you. One, is the Kardashian curse over? We see Devin, I just need to know, because you love to do the cross culture stuff, is that over yet? Because Devin Booker, boy, I'm telling you, he's making a campaign for him.
Well, of course, it depends on it depends on how you define it, right? Because Ben Simmons was also involved in the Kardashian universe, and he has had a very tough time. Okay. And I think that, to me, when we say Kardashian curse, what we really mean is, can this person manage their extremely busy social life with their career? And I think Devin Booker has answered that in the affirmative. And I think that a lot of people have struggled with that, have struggled with the kind of burdens of being a celebrity and being a star on that kind of national level, with the nuts and bolts job of being an NBA player. And I think Devin, whether or not the curse still exists, Devin Booker has answered that call, I think, at this point.
I agree. I don't even think it ever exists.
Yeah.
My second question is NBA protocols. Are they losing it in the background with this Chris Paul situation? I'm curious, what do you think behind the scenes look like? We know that by the NBA's protocol, vaccinated players must either wait 10 days after testing positive and show no symptoms for at least 24 hours, or the more likely option for a vaccinated player is to receive 2 back-to-back negative PCR tests at least 24 hours apart. Knowing those rules, when do you think Chris Paul will return?
I have no idea. And to answer your previous question, are they freaking out behind the scenes? You know what it's like in this world. It's when there is something that is happening behind the scenes that seems crucial and important, and there's no news. Quiet to me means that it's really loud. That means that they are really concerned on some level about what this could mean for the postseason, for the quality of the postseason, etc. I think the fact that we've heard nothing means that it's not to say that he's ill, but that they are really looking at it, and that it's a serious situation.
For those of you who might have been living under a rock, this past Saturday was Juneteenth. The NBA held several events and initiatives to celebrate the day as it continues to pursue racial equality and justice for Black men and women. Joining us now to talk more about this is the executive director of the NBA Foundation, Greg Taylor. Greg, welcome to Takeline.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you for joining us. Well, Greg, last week, legislation passed making Juneteenth a national holiday. the NBA Foundation has been leading the charge in a number of Juneteenth initiatives. So just tell us about what the NBA and its players are doing to honor this day in history.
Well, Juneteenth is an incredibly important day in African American history. We know that it marked the end of slavery when the slaves actually received the news of the ending of slavery. And I think the federal legislation is certainly a step in the right direction. But I do want to underscore that, creating a holiday is a great move, but we need action and tangible progress moving forward. And so what this does is acknowledge that the vestiges of slavery were criminal and terrible. And so celebrates that end. I get that. But this is about, things like equity and education, access to health. Like, we need systematic and really practical change moving forward. So it's a step in the right direction. I'm excited about that, but there's so much more to do. And I want to be clear, that's what we're focused on in the NBA Foundation.
You're the first executive director of the NBA Foundation.
Sure.
Can you talk about what spurred the creation of this role, and what you hope to do?
Yeah, no, I mean, the league has had a long-standing history of action around social justice and civil rights. But I would take you back to the bubble in Orlando when the Milwaukee Bucks decided not to play. While we have a long-standing history, and actually the foundation had been up before that moment, I do think that was an inflection point, and it caused the league to really think a little bit about how do we use our platform, what do we want to be known for, what's our voice in the world, and I think the NBA Foundation was one of several efforts at the league that was created. So January 4th, man, I came on as the executive director of the league. I've been at the NBA for 8.5 years in other positions. Renee, that's why I know you and your career and what you got going, and I get it. But it's really about economic opportunity for Black kids. What we're suggesting is there's lots of social justice issues, but the issue we are trying to face and tackle is really closing the racial wealth gap between African American and white families. We know it's a tenfold gap. And while we're not grand to think we're going to solve it for everybody, we do want to, for those young people that participate in the organizations we invest in, we are trying to take a stand around meaningful employment, living wage, benefits, mentorship, professional opportunities. We're trying to work in our NBA markets because we know our teams and the union and others, we're all partners in this around the work, but our teams represent anchor institutions on the economic side. And we're trying to tell positive storylines. Too often our young people are defined by stereotype or bad decision. And we're saying, nah, these young people are producers and champions and leaders. And how best to use the NBA platform to get out that message about our young people. That's what the NBA Foundation is all about.
Wow, I love everything about that, Greg. I got to talk to you after this about my foundation because I hear so much synergy, seriously.
Let's go.
And so that makes me ask, what initiative or effort are you most proud of, or are you looking forward to? Because you talked about that tenfold gap. You talked about telling positive stories. So, what hits closest to home for you?
Well, what hits home for me is I'm amazed in this era of social unrest and social change, how many companies and corporations have made these bold proclamations about, wanting to invest money. I've heard the Wall Street Journal may have been 50 billion, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of money pledged to these issues. So, folks know there's a need and they know there's an opportunity. The challenge is I'm not sure many of those companies have really operationalized what that plan is. What happens on Monday morning? How are you changing your hiring practices and how you're preparing young people, in this case, Black youth? So what really excites me is I think the NBA has a bit of a halo and a positive brand that folks want to be associated with. We can build tables to have authentic and genuine conversations. That what we're hopeful is the outcome will be how you prepare and place young people in meaningful employment in different ways. And so, Renee, I'm super excited about that. Like, I'm super excited to get the hiring partners or the heads of human resources departments or the diversity and equity and inclusion officers to literally sit around a table and, other brand recognizable companies and really talk about what do we have to do differently to hire our young people in different ways. Our young people want to work. Our young people have perspective. Our young people can contribute to your bottom line. But this is about getting kids ready for companies, but also getting companies ready for kids, right? And so how do we have that synergy back and forth? So that's what we're about. And that's what we're trying to figure out. And we got a long way to go. We know there's lots of leaders in this space, but we're here too. And we want to have a conversation with anybody who wants to partner to do this differently. because it's about economic opportunity for Black kids. That's what we're very clear and unapologetic about.
The Board of Governors has pledged $300 million over 10 years towards these issues, leaving aside whether that's enough, whether $1 million per team for 10 years is enough. How do you connect to your earlier point about an action plan? How do you connect that money with actionable solutions?
Yeah, well, first of all, the governors have been incredibly generous in their initial effort, and all of them have talked about this being a foundation that would last in perpetuity, that the $300 million over 10 years is simply meant to send the message that the league knows this is a long-standing problem. It takes significant resources to be a leader in this space, or at least a partner in this space. But the expectation is that we will raise more money and that we will be a foundation in perpetuity going forward. So I want to be really clear about that. Lots to do, but that is the mission. We have 3 strategies. We're trying to build really strong, durable, lasting partnerships at the local level in our NBA markets between the NBA, like-minded companies that want to hire Black youth differently, and nonprofits that have a history of preparing those young people for work. So think about it as like a 3-legged stool on the ground in community. The second is about meaningful employment. Far too often, folk in the Black community are in retail, healthcare, or food service. And while my mama said there's honor in all work, the reality is those are hyper local and hyper vulnerable jobs. So we want to really be about recruiting employers in knowledge works and digital and fintech and other areas of growth areas that really have a living wage, mentor, and professional development opportunities. And then thirdly, it's about storylines. What I said a minute ago, like we can no longer define our young people by socioeconomics or where they've been or poor decisions. We want to define them and get that information out to the larger public. And so to me, the real opportunity is to capture those storylines, create amazing content, and utilize the NBA's, place in the content world as a, global media company to really try to change hearts and minds and eliminate stereotypes around Black kids, that they are leaders and champions and producers, and that youth voice matters. So anyway, that's what we're doing. And I think those are the missions to try to operationalize our commitment.
I wanted to ask you about the athlete activists, because this has emerged, it's always been there. We've seen it since the beginning of time, but 2020 was just a time like no before. What are your thoughts, you two being a former athlete, like what are your thoughts when it comes to now athletes speaking up? This is what happened with Milwaukee last year. That's basically what the jump off point was. And it's the culmination of all this athlete activism coming to a head. So what are y'all's thoughts and feels on that?
Well, let me just correct a little bit, push back. So I was an athlete until Gary Payton took my spot in high school. And I ended up passing them the water bottle for the
Always an athlete, okay.
So I just want to be clear.
One of Gary's first steals.
I want to be clear, but I also want to be clear. We both made the league, so let's just be clear about that. Okay. No. But to your point, no, don't promote me, Renee. I haven't earned that yet. No, I think to your point, there's a couple of things. I mean, again, it opened up with history as we talked about who we are as a league and what our reputation has been. But we're also enjoying, I think, an era where both our mega superstars and our everyday players are equally committed to social justice issues. And I think folks, players understand that in order to be a leader in this space, you got to do some research. You got to be a student of the issues. You've got to, walk before you run. And so I think to your point, my read, I actually was in the bubble when Milwaukee decided not to play in Orlando. And I think that was just the culmination of a lot of effort. If you remember, prior to that, a number of the players, I think about Tobias Harris, a member of our board, who literally was using every one of his interview platforms to say her name, and was talking about the Breonna Taylor conscious race. And I know you guys on the W side, Renee, are just leading the charge with other folk. And so I just think we're blessed to be in that era. I think you couple that with the truism that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And so you got what's happening in community. You've got the NBA recognizing that the brand matters and that we want to be on the right side of history of these issues. You've got players who are willing to organize and move forward and really lead. You've got owners, everybody's stepping up. And the question is, how are we going to do it? And I think in many ways, one of those strategies is the NBA Foundation that, I'm blessed to be a part of and trying to add some leadership to. And look, let's talk offline, Renee. If you're doing something in the NBA market, we want to know. Let's go, like seriously. And so I'm excited to be here and good to talk about this stuff.
He's Greg Taylor, Executive Director of the NBA Foundation. We look forward to hearing more from you and from the NBA Foundation in the months and years to come. Thank you, Greg, for joining us. It's been great.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's good to see you. Talk soon, and anytime. I appreciate your words and your perspective and the issues you guys are tackling on here, and happy to be a part of it.
Okay. You already know. I don't have to tell you. That sound means it's time for Buzzer Beaters, where we talk about some stories we didn't get to cover because we covered a lot of good stories in the show. But because of time, we might have missed a couple. I'll get the party started.
Yes.
The NCAA Supreme Court ruling. Thank goodness that the Supreme Court has some sense and they sided with the NCAA athletes. Bleacher Report said the NCAA cannot prevent colleges from providing educator-related benefits like computers, graduate scholarships, and internships to the athletes. It's crazy that we have to even say that they can't. I just can't even believe that we had to have this ruling. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad where we are in all things name, image, and likeness, because you got to think a lot of athletes give their heart and soul. We know those athletes that were great in college maybe don't go on to have an amazing pro career. So imagine if those college athletes that were mega stars were able to make money during their time in school. I just don't know why the NCAA would want to block anything that progresses that. But listen, I'm glad we're here. I'm glad the Supreme Court ruling was the right ruling. And I'm glad that just college athletes are getting their just due, because I was a college athlete and I think that I'm happy with my scholarship. I'm happy with the free ride because I do know that a lot of people left college with a lot of debt. So I'm thankful for that, but I'm also excited to see a new era of athletes making money, man, whether it's college or not.
My buzzer beater is going to be Jordan Clarkson, Sixth Man of the Year in the NBA, the greatest Filipino basketball player of all time. Some may disagree, but I'm going to say that. Jordan came to the defense of a Filipino food truck in Utah that was covered in spray painted by vandals, racist vandals, and anti-Asian slurs. Clarkson paid to clean that up. He also promoted the food truck, and that is just an absolutely great thing that Jordan Clarkson did. And I think one of the,
that's dope.
As when I was growing up, nobody knew what Filipino was. It was like, I grew up in a white area predominantly. So it was like, you're Asian or you're Chinese. Nobody knew what this meant. And the kind of like broader awareness of our culture and cultures in general, a lot of the entry point for people to learn about other cultures is food. And so this is a really important a thing that should not be overlooked. And I'm super happy to rep Jordan Clarkson, again, the greatest Filipino basketball
We
player
love to see it,
of all
Jordan.
time. Goodbye, folks. That's been Takeline for this week. Follow and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, subscribe to Takeline Show on YouTube for exclusive videos from this episode, plus my digital series, All Caps NBA, which airs every Friday.
Yes.
Check it out, folks. Goodbye. Go Hawks!